Hello, I'm Austin Lunsberg. This is my Reflective Practices project, part B, standards video. First off, we have standard 1.5, which is differentiate teaching to meet specific learning needs of students across a full range of abilities. So according to literature, it is apparent that school-age students will be at different stages of cognitive development. Therefore, it is important to incorporate open-ended tasks into your practice. In my practice, I have done this as shown in the artifact in the top left-hand side of your screen, where I created a create a zoo, perimeter and area task. In this task, students had to create a zoo using the area of one page in their book and plan out where different enclosures and interactions would go using their perimeter and area skills. However, the zoo had some minimum requirements that the students needed to add in, but apart from that, the students could add in whatever they wanted to that zoo. Allowing the students to put anything they wanted in the zoo made this task an open-ended task that allowed the more high-level students to challenge themselves, while the more lower-ended students only needed to do the minimum requirements of the task. Furthermore, I have demonstrated the ability to differentiate as shown in my Year 4-5 measurement assessment that I used in my final placement, where I created a differentiated assessment task for my 4 ASD students in the class. To guide my differentiated task, I liaised with an occupational therapist and made changes such as increasing the font size of the assessment, having minimal colour on the assessment, having minimal questions on the page to stop the students from being overwhelmed by the assessment itself. Following on, we have standard 2.5. This standard is literacy and numeracy strategies. I believe I've met this standard by incorporating various literacy and numeracy strategies in my teaching. I've used literacy strategies as shown by my information report unit plan, which I implemented in my final placement where I incorporated elements of the teaching and learning cycle. I did this by first building the field or context in the students, with them looking at different information reports before moving on to structure and language features of information reports, and then finally constructing their own information reports as shown in the unit plan. Furthermore, as part of my final placement, I incorporated literacy group rotations every day, which saw each group focus on either guided reading, handwriting, listening to reading, comprehension, or grammar, depending on the day. This strategy has been proven by literature to be an effective way of keeping students motivated about learning English. Additionally, literature from Ray suggests that there are 5 key processes in which children develop numerical skills. The 5 processes are problem solving, reasoning and proof, communication, connection, and representation. As part of my final and initial placement, I have implemented units that encourage the use and development of these skills. Moreover, I have used numeracy strategies such as using concrete materials and the 5 key processes as shown by the measurement unit plan that I implemented on my final placement. Within this unit, it details how I use concrete materials such as measuring cups, rulers, and other scaled instruments to teach students about measurement with a hands-on, body-based approach, and also included tasks that encourage the use of the 5 key processes. Next, we have standard 3.2, which is plan, structure, and sequence learning programs. Planning, structuring, and sequencing learning programs that follow on from one another is an important part of teaching. I like to use a constructivist approach in all my planning for my units, so each lesson builds on a previous idea or previous knowledge gained from the teaching. I believe I have shown the ability to plan, structure, and sequence learning programs by creating unit plans and lesson plans as shown by my information report unit plan and space unit plan document, which show how I personally plan and structure sequence learning programs. Feedback quotes from my supervising teachers also support how I meet this standard, with one of my teachers saying that I was able to successfully plan units in a number of learning areas. Following on from 3.2 is standard 3.3, which is use teaching strategies. I like to use a variety of teaching strategies to help progress my students. However, I particularly like to use a dialogical approach in conjunction with other teaching strategies such as explicit teaching and student-led activities. To demonstrate that I have used teaching strategies, you can refer to my TPA where it details how I inquired into the dialogical approach and how it enhances student learning in nutrition as I implemented this strategy as part of my final placement to guide my inquiry. Additionally, you may refer to the task cards I used as teaching strategies to cater for a student with auditory processing disorder on my final placement. As this student struggled with verbal information, the strategy of using task cards helped the student in being able to understand tasks by reading. Furthermore, supporting that I have met the standard is the provided teacher feedback, where it outlines that I used a variety of teaching strategies while on my initial placement, such as using visual and tactile cues to enhance student learning. Moving on to Standard 4.2, Managing Classroom Activities. Managing classroom activities is an important part of making sure your class is effectively learning during lessons. As shown in both my artifacts, I manage classroom activities by arranging seating and arranging groups to maximise student participation and engagement. Various research, such as Williams 2012, suggests that arrangement of the classroom plays a particular role in the engagement of students in the classroom. The same study suggests that arranging where the students sit can be used as a preventative measure to stop distraction within the classroom environment, as well as promoting learning within that environment. Based on the literature, I implemented a seating plan in my final placement, where it became apparent that some students need to be separated in order to maximise their engagement and quality of work. As you can see, I used this plan to work out how to arrange students. Within the seating plan, students were sat next to peers that would not distract them, but however facilitate their learning. Furthermore, in my final placement, I also arranged groups to manage student engagement within the task. The groups were arranged so students would be encouraged to engage in the task rather than be hindered by other peers. As you can see, the students were able to engage with the task and put down as many responses as they could in a See, Think, Wonder task. Next we have Standard 4.3, which is Managing Challenging Behaviour. Behaviour management is an important part of maintaining a safe and engaging learning environment. It is imperative to stay on top of behaviour management. Strategies that I implement in my practice include pausing, using claps to gain attention, teacher call with student response, moving students to other seats, maintaining routines, using a noise meter, and using break cards. As shown in my artifact, I set up break cards for my ASD students so that when they feel they are going to engage in behaviour that may distract or hinder themselves or others in the classroom, based on their emotional state, they can use the break card to call off. Furthermore, I have been praised for managing challenging behaviour based on quotes from my supervising teacher, which detail how I manage behaviour strategies that support positive learning. Standard 5.3, Make consistent and comparable judgments. Throughout my placement, I used a range of different techniques to make consistent and comparable judgments. Most commonly, I used marking rubrics and checklists to assess student work in both summative and formative ways. I preferably like to create my own rubrics that align to the Australian curriculum. Otherwise, I will use rubrics from trusted resources such as Primary Connections or TeachData. This is supported by teacher feedback where I was praised for creating my own marking rubrics. Also, further evidence that I'm able to make consistent and comparable judgments is a photo of the rubric that I used to mark my summative assessment piece for a Year 4-5 English class. And additionally, the formative checklist I used as part of a grammar unit. Finally, as part of my initial placement, I collaborated with another pre-service teacher to moderate a Year 3 student's work. We both used the same marking criteria on the individual student before comparing our marking together. After comparing the assessment of the student, we moderated to give the student the final grade. Attached is an example of a final grade we gave a student after moderating his old presentation. Standard 6.1, Identify and plan professional learning needs. During my placements, I frequently asked more experienced peers for feedback on my teaching to identify things I needed to work on in a professional sense. When I had identified what professional learning I needed to engage with, I would go away and use resources such as the internet and other people to gain information around those needs to better my practice. For example, something I needed to work on was differentiating and catering for autistic students. So to do so, I liaised with an occupational therapist to gain information about the learning disability and how to cater and differentiate for these students. Below you can see some quotes from my supervising teacher demonstrating my ability to identify and plan professional learning needs. As you can see, my supervising teacher is quoted talking about how I was keen to discuss my own learning and how I was open to suggestions. My supervising teacher is further quoted talking about my engagement in staff meetings that also served as professional development sessions to better my own practice and understanding. Conclusively, we have Standard 7.1, which is Meet Professional Ethics and Responsibilities. I pride myself on always staying professional within the classroom. Furthermore, I make sure I stay up to date with training such as RAN, filling out my professional responsibility, as well as implementing teaching from this training. I was also praised on my professionalism by my site coordinator as part of my initial placement. That concludes my video. Thank you for watching.